crypto exists to really support the needs of the users.
They're saying the best way to legitimize DeFi is to use it within the TradFi environment.
Crypto, decentralized finance is a movement, is a momentum, is an innovation that you cannot stop.
Welcome to this episode of Couchonomics with Arjun in collaboration with the Founders Peak. We're beaming live from Singapore FinTech Festival. It's day one, and sitting across me, not on a couch, but on a chair, is a man who needs no introduction, nor does his company need no introduction. I'd like to welcome Richard Teng, who's the CEO of Binance, who very kindly spared time. And I heard, Richard, you weren't well today.
Well, thanks for having me, Arjun. I think firstly, it's a very good day for the crypto industry. Bitcoin just hit all-time high. It's not such a good day for me. I've been suffering from pain on the muscle. There's a muscle tear on my shoulders, right?
Oh my Lord.
So I went for a jab this morning to get some steroids and painkillers into the system.
We're not going to make this any harder for you than the day is already. But you're correct. I did check Bitcoin. I think the second you walked in, 75,000. Right. And I think that is quite interesting. And I guess a lot of it has to do with what's happening in the US, I guess. We'll wait for the end of the day, the result to do. Richard, my opening question is I guess, a question which might have been asked to you several times. I think it was 2023 when you took over as CEO of Binance, right? Now, I think a lot of people won't know, I actually knew you from your days at ADGM. I was even fortunate enough to be on a non-executive role of a fintech, if you might use that term, which I think we were together for about a year. What were some of the, I guess, the challenges, right, that someone stepping into a global organization's CEO role faced, and specifically from your own example?
Well, first of all, I must say that I'm extremely privileged and honored to be nominated for this role, right, by the founders, right, CZ, He, the rest of the co-founders. We run the largest crypto platform, crypto exchange, and the largest blockchain ecosystem in the world on that front. So it is challenging from that aspect. And you know, crypto is not very well understood by many regulators still around the world, by many people around the world. So in that sense, it's challenging. But I'm very privileged. I have an excellent team of senior leaders with me. So it's not a one-person job. It's really a teamwork. And we have, by today, more than close to 6,000 very dedicated staff working together to drive the freedom of money, which is our mission at Binance, right? So we're very, very honored working with a dedicated, very bright group of people, very driven group of people to really support every user that we have in terms of their crypto journey. When I step into the role as CEO, I always say that there are three important things that I will continue to focus on that will make Binance successful. The first is to make sure the company continue to be user-first, user-focused in everything we do, right? Be it in terms of product feature, running the most robust, resilient platform, operational readiness, security, on all those fronts. Trust and confidence of users is paramount to us, and we do a lot on that front to make sure that we maintain that trust and confidence. Secondly, given the direction of travel within crypto, it has now become much more compliant than in the past. I got involved in crypto in 2017 during my days as CEO of Abu Dhabi Global Market, ADGM. And if you recall then, nobody quite believed in crypto. Crypto is the only asset class that was embraced by the retail, but the institutions, corporate, high net worth individual regulators doesn't believe in it, right? So when I got involved, the more I studied, the more I believe it's going to be the future of finance. But for it to go mainstream, it needs two elements to come into play. One, regulatory certainty, so that operators, players like ourselves know what the parameters to move within, right? Users know what sort of protection there are out there for them. Secondly, with that, the institutions will start adopting it, right? So it's only with institutional adoption that you're going to see a lot of mainstreaming, a lot of mass adoption. We have seen that in 2024. So 2024 has been a landmark year for the crypto and blockchain industry. Mm-hmm. Firstly, with the Bitcoin ETF approval in the US and then in many different parts of the world. I think that changed the landscape, gave crypto, blockchain industry a lot of credibility on that front, right? So people start to believe in it. And when you have the largest asset manager in the world, in the form of BlackRock CEO Larry Finn, coming out to say that he has moved from a skeptic to a true believer now in Bitcoin, I think that speaks volumes. So if you look at the top 200 financial institutions globally now, everyone has a blockchain agenda, crypto agenda on that front. So that is a transformation here. So we continue to invest very heavily into compliance. We are now regulated in 20 different countries around the world, the latest being the regulatory approval in India and Argentina. So we are the most regulated exchange globally. So we have invested a lot on compliance. So last year, our compliance spend went up more than 30% to about $213 million. Right? This year will go up even further as we continue to invest very heavily into that space. We are blessed that we can make all these investments, very heavy investments into compliance, and we intend to make it a competitive advantage for ourselves. And thirdly, it's still a very nascent industry. If you look at crypto adoption globally, it's only about 6 to 8%, right, based on estimates. So we are very early in the cycle. The pace of adoption is going to be very fast going forward. The next 5 years is going to be much more exciting than the last 5. So we want to work with all the partners, ecosystem partners, to really embrace, really support a very vibrant ecosystem that really supports everybody and help everyone in terms of their growth journey.
I love your answer. You just made my job so much easy because now you've given me 3 or 4 topics where I can just dive in. So I need to throw away my notes and we just go with what you suggested. And what I love about your response is this is not just a Binance response, it's an industry response, right? Because I think you are a market leader, and so therefore you're the flag bearer, and that comes with certain responsibilities. Let's start with the adoption rate, which you talked about, 6 to 8%. And I think that is a function of a number of things, right? You mentioned trust, and we will come to the trust in a second, but it also comes in terms of education.
Absolutely.
Right? I guess the birth of crypto was among a few technologists, people who spoke in languages which was quite alien to the vast majority. I joke about it. Even in the last 2 days, while I was at Insights Forum, I literally had to practically stop one of the round tables where a couple of people had basically just gone off the chart. And I had to tell them, I said, guys, I can assure you I'm a little bit more informed than a few other people, and you've even lost me now, right? So how do we make this mass adoption happen? Where is there a point of inflection that we will hit? What are some of the things that you are doing, the industry is doing, which will drive mass adoption at scale?
Mass adoption comes through via a few things, right? So if you think about it, I say 2024 is a landmark year because firstly, you have greater regulatory certainty and players know the parameters that we can operate within, right? Having said that, it's still very early. Only about 1/3 of global regulators are regulating this space. 2/3 are still not regulating, right? So how do we work with global policymakers, regulators to come up with very good framework, which on the one hand support the innovative aspect of blockchain and crypto, and on the other hand, manages the risk of it. So that's one aspect. On the pace of adoption, is an innovation, is a technology. So the pace of adoption is going to be very fast. Today, we have about 238 million users on our platform, making us the world's largest exchange. And I can share with you that the first 100 million users took us about 5 years to onboard. And the next 100 million users took us roughly 26 months to onboard. Right?
Okay.
So much faster pace. And this year alone, we have onboarded about 58 million new users for the year to date.
Wow. Okay.
Right? And we are not towards the end of the year yet. So you can see that the pace is getting quite rapid as more people understand it, as institutions start to adopt it, develop products around it, the ETFs around the world, new options being created, etc., etc. We are starting to see a lot of institutions starting to do allocation. So this year alone, our institutional KYC, the number of new clients that we have onboarded, rose 131%, right?
Okay.
Which is phenomenal. So a lot of institutions, a lot of high net worth individual corporates start to increase allocation, right? So you might have read that some of the largest banks, BNP Paribas, for example, in Europe, have started doing allocation onto that front. Some of the endowment and foundation are doing that. We are seeing a lot of traditional trading firms that used to just trade commodities, FX, securities, right? Setting up crypto desk now to trade. So all those will continue to help. And obviously, education is a very, very big part. We run what we call Binance Academy, a free-to-air portal, right? So about 27 million people have benefited from it.
I'm one of them.
from at a novice beginner level to very advanced learner.
Which I'm one too.
Yeah. So you know the platform that we run. It's free to air. You have plenty of good content in there, and it's part of the effort to tell people you need to understand this space more. I get a lot of questions to me to say, Richard, which token should I buy? And I always say, do your own research because it's very important. You're dealing with your own money on that front. So what we want to do is to make sure that we put out the tools out there for people to learn, understand, and then if they wish to, depending on their risk appetite, invest into this space, right? We also work a lot with educational institutions around the world. So we work with close to 200 institutions, helping them with the blockchain curriculum, so that the people coming through the education system are very savvy about blockchain and crypto, right? My firm view is that blockchain together with AI will become the foundational level of every infrastructure in every economic subsector going forward. So be it in terms of real estate, entertainment, supply chain financing, financial services. Most of the architecture, infrastructure that these industries are built on are pretty archaic by now, right? And to transform them, to make it much more effective and efficient, what can you rely on? AI and blockchain, right? So the youth, the young adult, the people that go through school needs to understand this technology and understand that well. So we are making strong efforts on that front as well.
This year, to me, I see a seismic shift, right? We joke that a bunch of us do scavenger hunts across all these conferences. And you're correct. I think, the narrative has shifted in terms of these conferences. There's so much more conversation around digital assets, which is underpinned by blockchain. There's increasing more conversation with AI. But here are two questions that I have for you, if you so choose to respond to it. One is, one of these two technologies is incredibly hard to regulate, right? Because it's evolving at a pace that's crazy. That's AI. And I think Ravi Menon spoke about it this morning, right, sir? The other is very expensive if you're going to have the erstwhile incumbent banking infrastructure or financial infrastructure to move away from the way it is built, right? And there have been massive resistance to change. Let's be honest, parts of the world, cloud computing is still not walked in, which is, people talk about the cloud computing wave being 10 years ago, and I joke with them. I'm like, what are you talking? Half my clients are still on-prem. How do you think, where will the funding of this shift come, right? And how will the regulator be able to cope up with the applicability of these technologies in financial services when the technology itself is so nascent?
What you need to see are very useful utility coming through, right? The use cases, the innovation, and that really drives more and more people into this space. I was at I spoke at an IMF forum about 2 years ago, and it's very insightful. I was on the panel with some bankers, and obviously, the bankers' view of crypto industry, right? So they were coming at me for a while. The reason why crypto has grown so fast is because the banks has failed the different economic subsector, the different constituents. But in many parts of the world, financial inclusion is less than 20%, meaning people have no access to the banking system, no access to the payment system. Remittance to their loved ones are extremely expensive, more than 10% of the total remittance, right? And that's where crypto come into play in the first instance, where you can remit money to your loved ones cross-border at a fraction of the price. And your loved ones receive it on an instantaneous basis instead of through the banking system that take 2 to 3 days, going through a couple of correspondent banks to reach your loved ones. The financial institutions take a huge cut out of that. Massive cut, right? And if you look at things like stablecoins, why it has grown so fast? Because there are really unfulfilled needs. In the last few years alone, many parts of the world have gone through hyperinflationary situation, right? And people have been arguing that, crypto is not a store of wealth. I would beg to differ. I travel the world quite extensively. And I get thanked by many of the communities that are underserved by financial institutions to say that crypto to them is a life changer, right? If not for the fact that they have access to crypto, that operates 24/7. It doesn't sleep. You can get access to the platform any point in time. They can store their value via things like stable coins instead of the local currency. They'll be in a much worse off situation, right? So those are compelling innovation. Those are compelling
use cases.
use cases, and they will continue to drive this innovation going forward. And when people see that, people will embrace it. So again, this is a technology you can't push back on the momentum.
No, interesting. So my first conversation this morning was about CBDCs. I then had someone who talked about stable coins. You're now talking about crypto in general. And so if I just take digital currency as a common term, right? There are several arguments out there, but I'll present one. And one is that all of these will coexist in some form or the other because they're either bottom up, top down, they form different use cases. Where do you see the place for as a digital currency, right? For I guess items like Bitcoin and altcoins, where do you see them fit into this overall digital currency landscape?
I would term them as digital assets, right? So that's a much broader term than just currency alone, right? They have different use cases. So if you look at Bitcoin itself, which is still, the largest constituents of tokens of crypto, right? Close to 50 plus 60%, right? In terms of market capitalization, it's the most decentralized currency out there, most decentralized product out there. And actually this year is the best performing asset class, right? For year to date. If you think about it, the beauty of it is limited in supply, is decentralized, nobody can control it, nobody can create more, pump more into the system. And that's why it is trusted, right? It's a trustless system on that front. So it will continue to be very important. The different other tokens really depends on their utility, their use cases, their engagement with the community. They might take off in a very successful manner or not, right? But that really depends on their own roadmap in terms of development. So you can't speculate too much for that. But to me, these are all digital assets. They will all have an important role to play, be it in terms of whether it's a store of value, whether it's a medium of exchange on that front, or whether it's just a medium for people to get to know crypto. I think this year alone, you see a lot of meme coins coming into the market.
I read your report actually last night.
So people argue against the meme coin, but they are a very easy way for people to get excited, to get acquainted into crypto and come in. And by the way, not all meme coin projects doesn't have utility. Many of them have roadmap on how to build that utility over time, right? So that is the first phase of what we are seeing. So to me, we need much more innovation. You see innovation on things like layer one, GameFi, SocialFi, DeFi, many different subsegments of crypto. And as a crypto exchange, we want to be agnostic to all this. We want to support innovation in this space in whatever way we can. So we encourage further innovation and use cases on that front.
You are by far the biggest exchange. I know you're 2x the next one or 3x. I have no idea, right? I didn't do my numbers before coming in, but you're by far. How do you see Binance evolving beyond being an exchange player? You've already introduced a lot of interesting products, right? There's Binance Earn, there's Binance Pay, right? How do you see evolving as a business in the near future?
Will always be that of a crypto exchange, offering our users the best product feature, the most liquid market out there, right? And people underestimate the importance of very liquid markets. So for any players coming through us, they enjoy the tiniest, the narrowest bid-ask spread, and that results in substantial savings. On top of we charge very, very little fees. So we want to make sure that our users are protected on that front. We will continue to innovate. We continue to invest heavily with new product features. Just this year alone, as and when we are ready, we continue to roll out new products. You mentioned some of them just now. Things like Super Earn, Mega Drop, copy trading, our Web3 wallet, and the list goes on, right? So we will continue to innovate. We continue to invest very heavily. But our core mission and core business will always be that of a crypto exchange.
We want to bring people
we will bring people into. We want to support everybody in terms of their crypto journey on that front, wherever they are in the world.
So you're operating across numerous countries now, right? That brings a certain amount of complexity, not just regulatory complexity, which itself is a challenge because people are on different sides of the curve, and sometimes they're actually not harmonized at all. They're moving in opposite direction, right? That's another interesting conversations we have. We come to conferences, we talk about regulatory harmonization. Next minute, we hear about two countries which are completely on bilateral trade, which agreed to go or gone in completely different direction. There is consumer complexity because, as you know better, the world of Singapore is not the same as the UAE or any other part of the world. And then there are certain other complexities in terms of ecosystems, how you actually interact with other parties which are involved. How do you guys manage this level of complexity, right? I understand you're 5,000-6,000 people, or if not more, in a very fairly nascent sector which is evolving at a pace of knots. How do you guys deal with this?
Well, it's challenging. So in the ideal world, we hope to see harmonization of standards, right? But as of now, it is challenging because we are in Singapore and crypto is regulated as a digital payment token, right? If you go to many other parts of the world, it's deemed as a security. Some deem it as a commodity. Some have a different definition of it as a virtual asset or digital assets. And every framework is different. So you can't have a standardized platform that you can roll out globally. You need to make sure that you do proper localization, respect the local laws and regulations, and that is challenging in itself. So first thing we wish to see, but I think is quite a fair distance away, is harmonization of rules, similar to what you see in the banking space or the securities and asset management space, right? So I think that's one. But what is more important to really bear in mind on this matter, crypto exists, right, to really support the needs of the users. We work with many regulators around the world, so we work with more than 20 regulators where we are licensed. And for many parts of the world, we are not yet licensed, and they want to develop frameworks. So we help the regulators and policymakers to come up with what we call smart, innovative framework to support the innovative.
We know 20 countries. Why don't we help you? Right?
Yeah. We actually, as an organization, go way beyond what regulators prescribe to protect our users. I can just give you very simple things that we have done, right? So we were the first to come out with what we call a Safe Asset for Users Fund, which now stands at more than 1 billion. Regulators didn't prescribe that, but we say that we want to make sure that our users feel secure trading with us. In any event of security issue, they will be compensated from that fund. I think users gain confidence because we go way beyond what is needed, right? We push out things like proof of reserves. If you look at traditional financial institutions, they can't do that. Through proof of reserve, users will know where exactly are their funds held, right? Again, these are things that innovation technology can provide, which many of the traditional financial institutions are not able to. We have things like responsible trading policies, etc., and the list goes on. So we go way above what the regulators prescribe. We invest very heavily into security as well. Not just the security of our platform, but the security of our users. So this year alone, we help our users avoid about 2.4 billion in potential losses from transfer to things like poison wallet. We help our users recover funds that they lost through fraud, and that amounts to more than 70 million for year to date. So we work with law enforcement agencies to help them recover funds, right? So this goes way beyond what the regulators have prescribed, but these are things that we do because we always want to put our users' interests at the forefront and protect them.
One of the fastest catalysts to grow this market is that there are more players like you doing the good work, right? As you said very correctly, you're fortunate enough, you have scale, you have the funds to be able to, as I say, use compliance as a differentiator. Awesome, right? I love that. And I think that's one of the key learnings coming out of the first 2 days, which is how important RegTech and SupTech are becoming as a part of the future of financial services. What chance do lesser players have then, right? Because if this is going to become such a challenge from a regulatory compliance perspective and building those additional layers of security and trust, because as you said, you have to go the extra 10 miles, right? To even though you might not have to, just to do that assurance. What chance do the lesser players have today? And how much of an impact is that happening on the growth in the sector?
This sector is growing. So you can afford to have many more players, right? You don't really need to compete with each other that much, right?
Totally.
Because it's a growing pie and it's growing at a very fast pace, right? So we don't really focus on that. I mean, today we have more than 1,000 crypto exchanges globally, and liquidity on most exchanges are very poor, right? If that's the case, actually is less beneficial for users on those platforms because they pay very huge beta spread, right? They are disadvantaged from those places. As the industry continue to grow, it will reach a level where people realize that M&A has to come through to consolidate, to bring about liquidity in a much better manner so that users and investors benefit from deeper liquidity pool, right, on that front. You'll reach there over time, but we intend to continue to work very closely with everyone. Crypto sector is not only about the exchanges. There are so many different parts of the value chain, right? From your VC to your OTC player to your market maker to the token innovators, etc., etc. And we want to work with everybody. What we need to do is to make this sector even more vibrant and dynamic, right? And that will help bring in new players, that will bring in even more talent into this sector, bring about more use cases, and ultimately it's beneficial for everyone.
We talked about institutional investors, and you're correct. Larry Fink's statement and a number of others actually, right, who've come on and put, as they say, put their money where their mouth is, has been great, right? Over the last 12 to 18 months, maybe 2 years, we've seen institutional investors coming. Do you think that this will be a gradual growth, or is there a couple of silver bullets that which will get fired, and you will just see exponential growth in terms of institutional adoption for crypto?
2024 has been a landmark year, but 2025 is going to be an even better year.
Okay.
Yeah. The institution adoption will come through in a very rapid fashion, right? So in the first instance, it's going to be slow. And institutions, right? You need to go through proper deliberation at the top level of what to do. But they also have a lot of hoops and hurdles to jump through in terms of due diligence, understanding this space. But once they get in, they all start to get in together, right? So that's why I always believe that 2025, you'll see mass adoption picking up in a very, very fast manner, right? So that's how I see it. As of now, if you look at just the Bitcoin ETF in the States, more than 1,200 institutions have placed their money in it. But ETF in itself will have some limitations because they only trade certain number of hours a day within a certain time zone, right? It doesn't allow for effective investments and risk hedging in many sense, right? Because crypto, if you look at our exchange, we run 24/7 globally, right? So when there are news coming through, if you are just invested in an ETF, you can't offload your risk or you can't take on more risk to take advantage of new news flow coming through on that front. Whereas on the crypto exchange, you can. So over time, I do believe that as institutions understand this space more, they'll understand the benefit of being on a centralized exchange like ourselves and move further along that value chain.
And how do you see the DeFi exchanges then coming into the equation?
Well, I think DeFi exchange are growing at a rapid pace, just like centralized exchange are. I think everyone has a role to play. I think certain users prefer DeFi, certain users prefer centralized exchange with greater certainty on that front. But for DeFi, I think the bigger question is how would regulators look at that space, right? And how would they regulate that space? Would there be enough comfort for regulators? So that is something for DeFi players to have to think about.
Which brings me to the last question, if you so choose to answer this, and this is more of a macro question, which is, we have lots of conversation in terms of DeFi, TradFi convergence, and they're saying the best way to legitimize DeFi is to use it within the TradFi environment, right? Do you see that coming through in a big way, or do you think that the regulator will get increasingly concerned? I would imagine it would be the latter, but again, I'd let you answer that question. And do you think that has a direct implication in terms of how the bigger players, the institutional players, start to look at digital assets as an overall asset class?
My personal view is that crypto, decentralized finance is a movement, is a momentum, is an innovation that you cannot stop. So whatever the regulators do, this industry will move forward, right? So would there be greater convergence between TradFi and DeFi? Definitely, right? You are seeing a lot of TradFi players are now entering to DeFi, buying DeFi players, trying to bring through greater integration on that front. Will regulators start to scrutinize those space? Definitely,
Yeah.
right? As those integration comes through. But it is a wave that cannot be stopped, right? So you will see greater innovation, you will see greater collaboration, but you also see greater regulations.
You know, I was with a young sort of 21-year-old the other day who was asking about, what should he be doing? And I said, I call this money of the internet. I said, forget everything else, emerge and submerge yourself on this topic. I said, if I was 10, 15 years younger, I would have done it. I'm now looking closer to getting retired, so I'll just
You're
buy
still
a few
young.
months. Young at heart, not at body. I've got lots of muscle spasms all across too. I really appreciate you coming in, and especially since you were not even feeling well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope to see you again. It's been, I don't know, a couple of years since we bumped into each other. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you taking our time.
Thanks for having me.
Right.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Richard Teng. He's the CEO of Binance. I hope you found this session as informative as I did. I think there was some pearls of wisdom out there and some very interesting foresight in terms of how the sector is growing. And I completely buy the view that this is a wave, and, as they say, the cat is out of the bag, right? And I think we all need to sort of learn and understand. And as we learn and understand, we'll understand how actually impactful this entire sector of digital assets is. And that's pretty much been summed up in the last 2 or 3 days that I've been at SFF. With that, I'll say goodbye till the next episode.